3 learnings from the first 100 days of the Tinder project. What being emojiless has taught me this week. And what did Melania Trump say this week about relationships, and what can we learn from it? We'll see you right after this. G'day and welcome to the Tinder Project, the podcast where a straight Aussie man attempts to survive 365 days dating online as an American woman. I'm your host, Mark Rosenfeld, Australia's dating coach for women. I'm here with my sidekick, self-love coach, Teal Elisabeth, and together we have one mission: to make meeting good men fun and easy for you. Let's give it a bell. Teal!
Hi, Mark.
It's day 100.
Wow. I have to say, I am very impressed that you've been keeping this up for as long as you have. I would have fizzled out by now.
Day 100. And that doesn't even include, I'm going to do a little self-plug here, that doesn't even include the 60 warm-up days.
Holy moly. Do you feel like you're becoming more feminine now by embodying a woman for so long?
Actually, I kind of do. I feel like I'm learning how to do it more and more effectively. And we'll talk in a little bit about the EMOJILESS challenge, which you gave me last week, which I had a lot of internal resistance to, Teal. But I feel... How do I feel? I feel achieved. I feel accomplished. I feel proud. And I feel... this isn't a feeling, but I feel I'm able to relate more better. How articulate of me. I feel I'm able to relate better to what my clients are going through in terms of, okay, this has been their online experience. Here's what's happening on the apps. Here's how to switch things around for different apps. And I have a few little learnings that I've picked up. There's been a lot of different things, actually, and I was tossing and turning kind of what to include in this today. But I thought I'd do a little share of some of the things I've learned in those first 100 days that I've sort of been passing on to clients and talking about every day with them. Would you like to hear?
I would love to hear. I'm very curious.
Good. All right. The first is, when it comes to the online sequence, if we want to call it that, it's a bit of a harsh one, but you're only as good as your weakest skill when it comes to dating in this quote-unquote territory. So you can do everything well, but if your profile sucks, or your photo specifically sucks, it's not going to go well. You can have great photos, but usually if your bio sucks, that's also not going to go great. Great photos, great bio. If your messaging is not on point, then it's not going to go great. And even something as simple as the transitions. How do you move it off with that finesse onto a phone call or a real life date, if that's more your thing, or even what to do once you're on that phone call, or if you move over to text and how to make sure it does turn into a phone call and not just more texting. It kind of can fall down at any point, and you can do the other points all well, but if that one area doesn't do so well, there's just a lot of little things you've got to get right, I think, is the first thing I've taken away from it.
Well, so shameless plug that good thing this is exactly what you help women with, right? Ladies, if you feel like you struggle in any of these things, Mark's your guy. He's here for you.
This is no, that yes, thank you for the shameless plug, Phil. I appreciate that. Those little things along the way, if you get them all right, and we'll talk about number 2 in a second, it can flow really well. There's some amazing guys on there. And my clients, I'm doing this with them every day. So we're meeting guys who are like, yeah, this is a good guy. This is a good solid guy. There's good guys, and we're seeing them. But I also understand that for a lot of my clients, it's like they don't even see them at the beginning. And if they occasionally do, when they first come to me, I mean, for you listening, you may not even see them at the beginning. And even if you occasionally do, they're not the ones putting in the effort. Which kind of leads me to number 2, actually, which is that your reality doesn't have to be the reality. There's a concept in psychology called the availability heuristic, which basically says we perceive a topic as we know it compared to the wider experiences and varieties of the topic. So there's a lot to relationships. There's a lot of different ways to experience the world, online dating, all the categories of life, the news, everything like that. But we tend to be focused in more of a small area. As in, our experience tends to be isolated to kind of what we've known, which is usually a series of 3 to 12 experiences, which have kind of summed up to make our reality and understanding. Our brains do this because our brains, especially as we get older, we prefer to categorize things and save our energy, save as much glucose as we can for when something is novel and new. So all the time we're going through life and we go, oh, what is that? That's a light. Okay, so it fits in with all the other lights in the way lights work in our brain. What's that? That's a tree. Most trees work the same way unless you're a biologist. What is a painting? Most paintings mean the same thing to most people unless you're an art connoisseur. So we kind of do that with all the areas of our life, and therefore we assume that our reality has momentum because, okay, what we know from the greater circle, if you imagine a small circle inside a big circle, what we know is the small circle, and we tend to assume that that's the reality. Whereas it's more true that it's just our reality. So you might be listening to this and you go, well, in my town, there's only 500,000 people, 50,000 people here. This doesn't work for me, or that doesn't work for me. And obviously there is different challenges in different places. But I really encourage clients to say, there was a time where you couldn't walk and you figured it out. Just because your old reality has momentum doesn't mean that momentum needs to continue. And if your old reality hasn't been serving you, it sounds kind of bad to say, but there's people who are uglier than you, less attractive than you. There's people who have way more limitations than you, and they've done it. They got through this. I'm not saying the majority of them did, but there's some that did. Mm-hmm. And that's why I like to take the perspective of everything is your fault. It's hard to hear.
Takeaway number 2. Everything is your fault.
Takeaway number 2. Everything is your fault. But people don't like hearing that a lot of the time. But I do think it's empowering because when I look at my own life, if I look at and of course, if a tree falls on your house or something, sure, you probably could have bought a house that wasn't near so many trees. But there's certain things in life where there's some unpredictable stuff that happens. But anything that's consistent, anything that you're telling me, oh, this is going to happen again, I know what's going to happen because I've seen the past, that is your fault. Because you're saying, you're not using your resourcefulness to say, okay, what do I need to do? And often we're not aware there's a different path, or we don't have the tools to know that we can. But there really is. And I like that idea of everything is your fault, especially when there's any kind of pattern, because it gives you the ability to have power over it instead of just...
Yeah. I think the word fault implies that there's something wrong or that you're doing something bad. So maybe, although that can be, it can be a bad thing or not a great thing. I don't like that word because just the connotation makes you feel shitty, but it's more of everything is in your wheelhouse, in your control. And you have the ability to shift and change it.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you're saying there. And if this was a therapy session, I probably wouldn't word it that way. So this is more of coaching, consulting, how on I've got here. When you say something is my fault, it's easy to get the shame of I did wrong, therefore I am wrong, or I did wrong, therefore I am bad. So it's not intended to be used that way for those listening. I actually really like everything is in your control, because that's another way to positively optimize. I think that's really good, actually. It's more simply the fact that we can all do stuff wrong. And I think this is one of the most fascinating things about relationships, is it's like an area where when we do wrong, it's so easy to personalize it and make ourselves wrong, because that's the feeling we got from our parents, even if our parents were great. When you do something wrong in business, or when you lose some money or something, or if you're not doing your exercise routine correctly, you can still feel stupid, it can still hit your ego, but it's generally not going to hit you as hard or as deep. Whereas if you're doing something that's not helping you in relationships, it's just so easy to feel like, oh, I am fundamentally unlovable or unworthy. And that's not what we're saying at all. It actually couldn't be further from that. It's like there's things you're doing or not doing to create a certain reality. Change those things, you change your reality. Mm-hmm. But it can be a tricky conversation, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, that's the world I love to play in, is the deep subconscious reprogramming. It is so powerful and so fun. Yeah. So what your takeaway is for number 2, everything is in your control and you have the power to change your reality of what you're seeing on the apps.
Exactly. Yeah, what you're seeing, attracting, and the experience you're having.
Good takeaway. Mm-hmm.
Number 3, important one. Be emotional when you're interacting, but be objective at all other times. And I think we usually get this the wrong way around, is what I see at least is, for example, I had a client recently and she started going online, and the first profile we ran, she got really emotional. First 2 or 3 days, because she's like, these aren't the guys I want. This is reminding me of this insecurity that I'm going to have to settle. This sucks. She's getting so emotional when she's not talking to a man. I had to say to her, we'll call her Kim. I said, Kim, this is the objective part. This is the time where we sit back and we look at what's working, what's not. Dating apps, as much as we don't like to say it, they're a form of marketing. It's like going to a real estate agent. You see the houses in the window. There's 20, 50 houses in that window. There's probably 5 that catch your attention when you actually look. one's a little greener, you know, one has a certain number of bedrooms or something. There's things that catch your attention. Dating apps are no different. Now, we do need to restrict ourselves so we're not looking at too many houses, and some of the apps are actually changing this as we speak. But nonetheless, there is an element of like, I got to market myself here. I got to put myself out there. So you want to make sure that when you're in that phase, when you're not actually in a live interaction with a man, you're much more objective and, dare I say, even scientific about it. Even if that's not your forte, taking away the emotional weight of any outcome, not taking anything personally, just looking at, okay, I've given 6 guys my number and none have called me. Is that a personal attack on my lovability that's triggering the deep thing from my parents? Or is that I didn't ask in the right way or present my number in the right way, or perhaps just didn't build enough momentum in the prior conversation? Because one is very personal and the other is very superficial, and we rather the superficial solution to fix that. Once you're interacting with men, you talk a lot about feminine energy and making sure you're in your feelings and connecting with what your experience is. That is the time to be in your feelings. When you're actually in that conversation, switch all the planning off, switch all the tips off, and just go with what's in your body. But it's hard to do it that way around. If you can, however, that's the secret sauce. Be emotional, be present, be feminine. Even if you're texting, like if you're literally texting someone, let that flow through the text. Phone call, absolutely. First date, of course. But once it's off, if he goes 10 minutes later, if you don't get any matches that day, if your matches are terrible that day, that's when you've got to be objective. Because if you're going through... It reminds me of when I used to play poker, actually. If you're going through emotional... I used to play poker professionally. If you're going through emotional ups and downs, it's hell. Like you can't do it. And that's actually why I quit poker. I was doing okay. I was profitable. But I was so antisocial. But the bigger problem wasn't even that. The bigger problem was I was just having these emotional swings that every day I couldn't deal with the money. So same thing here. It's like if you're going through these emotional swings, it's going to be damn near impossible for you to be consistent enough to just change what you need to change and get the people through the funnel that you want. So those are the big three. Just repeating those. You're only as good as kind of your weakest link in your skill set. Your reality doesn't have to be the reality, and you are in full control of everything that's happening to you or happening in the future, going to happen. And be emotional when you're interacting, objective the rest of the time.
Love it. Thank you for taking time to condense all of that for us so that we can live vicariously and hopefully speed up the process for all of our listeners.
100 days. I'm still kind of.
I want to know how it's been to be emojiless online. And thank you for taking my challenge. I know it's a little harsh.
I was not happy about this challenge. I was not.
I'm sensing it didn't go well.
Well, I'll talk about that. The first few days after you told me this, I went, nah, this can't be a thing. I mean, maybe it partially works, but like it's not going to work as well as, because you can't convey tonality with the script, with words. And then I started thinking, well, okay, but how do they do it in books? Books don't use emojis. Plenty of authors have best-selling books. And then I went, well, hang on a minute, but authors, they talk about body language. They talk about, the trepidation of the character, or how her eyes fluttered, or her breast shortened. So I was going back and forth in my head being like, is this a thing or is this not a thing? And I was looking at marketing, and a lot of marketing has that stuff and it doesn't. And I thought, screw it, I've just got to stop kind of procrastinating on it and just give it a try and just do it. So we started 3 days ago, after 3 days of procrastination. And the rules for those listening is no emojis. Okay, no emojis at all. No single caps lock words, as in like a shouted word or an enthusiastic word. So none of those. And no word extensions. And word extensions are one that I use, I don't know, a lot, but maybe once per text or once per paragraph even, because they tend to deliver, like if I really want to do it, you can convince me. They have a certain different tonality that I like to use sometimes, because it's the way I talk, and I want the way I talk best represented on the page as much. I want the person to experience my personality as close as possible, and I believe we all use these. So I went to this challenge thinking, how is this going to work? Because I don't have any of these word extensions. This is really hard. And it's funny because I do a lot of the demos with my clients around, and they've actually gotten really good at their feelings words as well. So they've been helping. So shout out to you guys if you're listening. It's very early days so far, so I can't say too much. And if there is one other thing that I've learned throughout this challenge, which is if you're going on dating apps once a day consistently, there'll be no dates basically the first 5 days. Now, I know some of you out there are like, wait a minute, Mark, I got a date on the second day. You know, I got 3 dates on the third day. Okay, that's fine. I'm not saying it's not possible. But doing my consistent once a day, 20 to 30 minutes a day, we haven't had dates in the first 5 days pretty much the entire experiment. The momentum will continue after we finish, but the start is always slow is my point. So at this stage, it's actually been surprisingly more enjoyable than I thought it would.
Really?
Because... well, at first I didn't, but it's forcing me to, for example, I used the word gobsmacked this morning. And I also used the word flattered, which are 2 words I never would have pulled on if I didn't have emojis to, you know, if I had emojis to read.
Because that
so I noticed that it's
emoji is just one you use all the time. I don't even know
that's a good
what
point.
that word is.
Do you actually not know what that word is? Because someone said that to me this morning.
Yeah, it makes me think of like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Like a gobstopper? No, gobsmacked is like, oh my God, I feel gobsmacked. It's a flavor of surprised, basically. It's sort of surprised, turned up on a bit of steroids.
Okay,
maybe it's an Aussie thing.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It could be. You know, the funny thing, I didn't suggest it. It was one of the clients. That was the funny part. Anyway, we used it as a supplement for surprise. I think surprise would be the more common emotion there. But we use flattered as well. We've just been getting more emotion words in, and it still makes me hair a little bit because I look at these texts and it's like the dudes are using more emojis than me, and I look at it without reading it. I'm like, this looks so boring. Oh, I'm struggling with this. But I promised myself I wouldn't bias the experiment. So it's really too early to report any numbers-wise results. I mean, if I look at my numbers now, we've viewed 15 profiles so far. We've had 7 matches, and we're chatting to them. So there's not really much to sort of go on there yet. I did want to ask Teal, actually, though. Are we opening conversations for this challenge? Because there's kind of 2 ways to do this, and I've tried them in previous months. One is with each match, we kind of give them 24 hours, and if nothing's happened, we open the conversation. The other is we only talk to men who open the conversation with us. Models, if you remember from last week, or I might not have reported this actually, those models actually produce similar final results with different stuff up front of the funnel. What would you prefer, Teal, since you suggested this challenge? Are we going to open conversations this month after 24 hours, or are we going to do the whole, no, I'm going full feminine energy, not even opening a conversation here?
Let's open conversation.
But maybe get a few extra matches to compensate.
I want to get more conversations going, so let's open conversations.
You want to open conversations?
Yep.
Okay.
What I'm hearing, even though it's early days, what I'm hearing is that it's actually forcing you to think more about how you actually feel and not hide behind emojis, but actually articulate how you feel in your feeling messages, which is actually a little bit more vulnerable and may actually be more heart-opening. Just my hunch.
I disagree that in most cases emojis would be hiding.
And it may not be. Emojis,
I wouldn't agree with that, but I do agree that it forces...
benefit to emojis, for sure. But continue.
Yeah, I would say that it does force you to be more articulate. This is very early days. It's like 3 days in. So I think it does force you to be more articulate and to connect a little more with what you're feeling. I don't know that it necessarily represents it better, because if I use a hard eyes emoji, that to me speaks enthusiasm and shows what I'm feeling, just as well as saying I feel enthusiastic. But there are times where it's forced me, so far at least, to connect with, okay, I can't show this using an emoji. How do I show it using a word? Or maybe even a word with... Because I have used haha, OMG, abbreviations I'm keeping in, a couple of those. And obviously exclamation marks, I'm assuming okay. So it's kind of funny because the exclamation marks now is the main... other than feelings, is the main tool. I have to show excitement or a little bit of upwards energy at the end of a sentence. So we're kind of like forced to work with what we're working with. Yeah, I think that I disagree with you on the emojis hiding. I would just say that this forces you to to consider more what the experience is and put it into a specific word instead of representing it with, for example, a facial expression, which to me the equivalent would be an emoji.
Yeah. I'm totally like unbiased here. I think I just love that you're taking this as a challenge to try it out. And actually, since I challenged you on this, I started looking back on my text messages to my friends and things. And
Oh,
I
interesting.
do actually use some emojis. I'm not going to be sitting here on my horse and saying that emojis are the worst thing in the world and nobody should use them. I think they're wonderful, and they definitely add a little flair and a little sass and a little extra oomph. I tend to be using the sparkle emoji a lot.
Which one's the sparkle? The one with the star in the eyes?
No, it's not. It's not
No.
a little face. It's just a little like it's. If you type in shine, it'll like sparkle.
Sparkle.
It's just
Okay,
shine.
gotcha.
Because that's basically me. I just feel like I'm just shining and sparkly, and that's how I want my words to come through. So that's pretty much the only one of the only emojis that I use.
I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. So, guys, Teal went on a bit of an emoji bomb with me after last week's episode, where she just texted me like 6 times with all these emojis, and I loved it, Teal. Like, I was like, cool. Like, she's
From
in
now
a really
on,
good mood
I'm
right now.
only
Like, that was funny. I enjoyed that.
only texting you in emojis from now on.
It was hilarious. It was so good. But yeah, so far so good. I think it's forcing me to be more articulate with my feelings words and have a wider range there. I guess emojis could be a little bit of a crutch for not sharing the words. That being said, I think sometimes the emojis, I'm still hypothesizing that sometimes they represent the emotions better. For example, there was one example this morning. I was about to use, the guy said something really funny, and I was about to use the rolling on the floor laughing emoji, the crying eyes with the slightly sideways tint, which is one of my favorite emojis because it's just an upbeat, good, like ha ha ha. We're having fun, we're laughing, we're vibing, and I went, oh bugger, like how do I represent that without an emoji? And in the end, I think I ended up using the sentence like, "OMG, you gave me belly laughs reading that," with exclamation mark. Or it was something to that nature, like OMG, I just got the biggest set of belly laughs reading that, feeling so, oh gosh, what was the word I used? Yeah, feeling so surprised. Maybe that was the gobsmacked one. Feeling gobsmacked. I got so many belly laughs. I think that was it actually. Feeling gobsmacked, got so many belly laughs reading that, and it actually turned out okay. I was like, all right, this sentence is a reasonable representation of what I'm showing with that rolling on the floor laughing emoji. That's my experience.
Well, you don't have to do this challenge for a long time. Go back to your emojis anytime you want.
30 days.
What? 30 days? Oh God, don't.
Yeah, you kind of have to do it for 30 days because otherwise you will have too much variance in the
Oh
results.
boy.
You need to, not to get all sciencey on you, but you've got to do a week. A week won't prove anything because mostly you're not going to even get dates in the first week. So the second week is kind of building momentum off the first week. And since I've done a month with all the other tests, I probably need to do a month of this.
Oh my
So I will do a
gosh.
month
Oh,
of
I'm
this.
putting you in pain for a month. This is gonna be rough.
I mean, you know what? Let's see how it goes. Like, if I'm in too much pain, I'll quit. But I don't think I will. I think I'm curious to see if my hypothesis, and I'm going to be really careful not to bias. My hypothesis is it'll be solid, probably pretty good results, but maybe a few percentage short of what the other method does. But I'm open. It could improve it. I don't know. The guys are responding well so far. So, and especially if we juice it up by sending first messages, that ends up with more conversations. Let's wait and see before we judge it.
All right. Well, should we get on to our meaty discussion for today?
Let's move on because this made me lol to the highest degree that I have in a long time.
By the way,
for those that don't follow,
lol is officially in the dictionary now.
lol is a dictionary word, a very accurate description of using feelings. Don't ever emulate what I just did there. This video came out and it was hilarious to me for a number of reasons. I don't want to get too political on this podcast, but Melania Trump. Now, if you guys are listening to this, the election might already be over because we record these a few weeks ahead. So whoever wins the election, whatever, that's fine. I mean, as an Aussie living in the US, I don't get too attached to these types of things. But I do find it kind of hilarious because, you know, in Australia, politics is like, They're actually banned. Most Americans don't know this. They're banned from doing political advertising ever, except for the 6 weeks before the election. So you don't really ever hear about it, except for that 6-week window, which I think is a really good rule. Here it seems to start getting momentum 6 years before the election. Anyway, it's such a big thing over here, and I just find it so amusing because Melania Trump put out this video 3 days ago, maybe 4 days ago, and while I don't really get time for politics, I know I've observed enough to see that she's not really been around during this election cycle. Haven't seen her. I think she was at the convention. That's about the extent of her efforts. So I thought that was really interesting because obviously Donald is, whether he's won or lost the election at this point, he was never a politician by life. It's sort of something he grew into after his business career. And I very much doubt that Melania, when she married him, saw that as his future. So she was pretty supportive for the first campaign, whatever. Anyway, she put out a video this week that was basically extremely women's reproductive rights, fundamental human right. This should be for all women. And whether you agree or disagree with that, I just found it absolutely hilarious because it's such a bloody shit show, the politics over here. And Donald has been trying to balance this issue and struggling basically his entire politics with it. And again, whether you agree or disagree, it doesn't really matter too much. But I did find it fascinating that she came out and was just so against him on it. And this is her husband here. So I thought, Teal, I brought this up because I thought it brought up a really interesting discussion about supporting your man's purpose. Should you always do it? And then what happens if that purpose changes and becomes something you no longer agree with or resonate? Because, as I say, this issue for him has been the Achilles heel. He just can't get a straight answer on it. It's just, I listen to him talk about it, it's just BS every single time. And to hear her come out and so unequivocally say, husband, I'm against you, you are full of it, it just made me lol. It really did, because it was a culmination of all the things he's been struggling with. But yeah, I wanted to ask you, as a woman yourself, I'd love to know a little bit about your husband's purpose. I'm assuming you would agree with it or you wouldn't be with him. But then what advice, or how do we advise women if someone's a husband's or a committed partner, if their purpose changes and you're not all on board with it? Say values change even. Say someone wants to become a new religion or takes on a new view that's just not compatible with you. How do you feel that affects the relationship and can it survive that? Love to hear your thoughts, too.
This is a juicy one. And first off, I don't think any of us should be taking marriage advice or looking to Melania and Donald for any sort of value in what a successful marriage is, obviously. Quite the opposite. This is a what not to do kind of thing, especially during a political campaign. But yeah, that's another story. When we talk about purpose, I have a whole podcast episode on my podcast about how to create a spiritual and evolved partnership, because there are going to be moments in a relationship where you're going to push the boundaries of what you're both at capacity of in your moment of growth. If both of you are in this place of wanting to continue to grow your souls and you see the relationship as being an incubator for growing your souls, part of growth is outgrowing the current version of you. And that's actually what makes a relationship sustain over the long term. If both people don't want to grow, the relationship's going to get very stagnant. It's going to be waking up, going through the motions, watching TV, going to bed, right? And just being in that relationship and that kind of life. And for the most people listening here, that's not the kind of relationship we want. Then there are the people that stuck where one person wants to grow and their partner doesn't want to grow, where you end up actually pushing past them and outgrowing the relationship. And that can happen. But if you have two people that very much value self-growth as part of their relationship, incubator for their own self and their trajectory of their life, then it's actually one of the most important things to be able to actually support your partner in continuing to up level in their lives. And this is something that Spencer and I have done many iterations of. We met when we were 23 years old. I'm now 35 years old. There have been so many growth moments from the time I was in my early 20s to now in my mid 30s, where I realized, wow, we could have outgrown each other. We could have changed. Our values have definitely changed. When I was in my 20s, I wanted to save the sea turtles, and I was a biologist, and then I worked in the solar industry. I mean, I had very different purposes. Now I'm changing lives and bringing love to the world. So, you know, purposes can change and you can still stay together. That's the end goal here. The question is how. And I think that the most important thing is to really first recognize and see it for what it is, which is, wow, this relationship is not meant to keep myself or this other person in a box. Because I agree, I think a lot of people fall in love with a character. They fall in love with an identity of what makes that person feel good in the moment. It's like, okay, you like surfing, I like surfing. We can both relate to that. That feels like something that we create our life around, right? And then this person's like, actually, I want to move to the mountains. I don't want to surf anymore. And all of a sudden you lost that thing that brings you together. And if you don't have deeper values that hold you together, you are going to lose part of that. You're going to grow apart. And so I think it's about really asking yourself to dig deep on what is my soul growth journey? How can I continue to take responsibility for how I'm growing and evolving in my own self and in this relationship? And also give space and honoring this other person that they are going to grow and change, and not making that a bad thing, not making that a threat to the relationship, but actually making it something that perpetuates a more sustainable relationship for the long term. Does that make sense?
Is there an example you can give? I'm really curious, where you said you and Spencer have both had these value changes as time has gone on. You've grown into new people, which is beautiful. I love the way you articulated that. Could you give any examples that you're comfortable with of where a value of his changed that was really hard for you to absorb?
Yes, a very specific one's coming to my mind. And I think a lot of people can relate to this. For the majority of our early 20s, even into our late 20s, we really bonded over working hard at our jobs and then going to get beers after work and drinking and hanging out and connecting over a beer or a couple and letting that be a time to really drop in and build that intimate connection time. And even when we were traveling, you know, we would be out in these gorgeous places and we'd get a bottle of wine and watch a sunset and connect and drop in together. And it was such a part of our identity as a relationship, as a couple, to feel like we could really connect in that way. And then there was a moment about 2 years into our travels where Spencer was really leaning into his wellness, into his career, and realizing, I need to be top level elite, you know, performer, and I need to cut out drinking completely from my life. It cannot be a part of my lifestyle anymore. And it threatened me so much because it really made me afraid that we were going to lose that way of connecting. Not to say that that was the only way that we connected, but at that time it was a big way, it was a big highlight of my time with him, was getting to catch drinks and hang out and relax and kind of tune out the world. And I remember very much having to take some time and go, whoa, okay, this is not the way we relate anymore. How are we going to relate? And I really felt like he was kind of pushing me away and saying, I'm choosing my career and focusing on that more than taking time to connect with you. And this is more important to me than connecting with you. And I took it really hard. And I didn't want to give up drinking. That was another thing. I really enjoyed it. I didn't abuse it, but I really enjoyed being able to have that time with him. And so I felt I felt threatened in my values. Like now all of a sudden maybe he'd be judging me and my values, and also feeling like I just lost this way that we were connecting. And I really, really had to sit with it. And this is actually when I recorded this episode. It was about 4 years ago in Bali. I really had to sit with it. And that's when I really realized that I had been holding our relationship in this very specific expectation and container where this is how it had to be. Otherwise, it wasn't going to work. And I had to really ask myself, how can I surrender this experience and really support him, right? Because the last thing I want to do is be the girlfriend that says, no, you have to keep drinking. I don't want you to be healthy. I don't want you to focus on your amazing career. I want you to spend time with me and be quality time with me. I had to say, no, you know what? This is a season of our relationship where it's almost like we're going to grow apart while still growing together. And I talk about it almost as like a DNA double helix, where sometimes you're going to be really connected and really on point and just completely in tune with each other. And other times you're going to have to pull apart a little bit and kind of grow alongside of each other on your own path so that you can meet up again at another higher point in your evolution as souls. And I know this is way more advanced than probably what Melania was talking about or even considering or even understands. But me doing that and giving him the freedom, the support, the release of all expectation of what our relationship had to be, gave him the empowerment to go after what he needed to do. And he was also able to meet me and say, hey, it's not that I don't want to prioritize you. It's not that I don't want to spend quality time with you, but let's do it in other ways that are wholesome. And for me, it was saying, okay, Teal, you need to find other ways to connect with him and to put focus on your own stuff, because he does need to have some extra time to focus on his career, and that's okay. We weren't in the early days of dating. We'd been together for a long time, and it was saying, okay, it's no longer about spending every single minute together. It's now about us focusing on our journeys as our own souls growing alongside of each other so that we can meet up at an even higher point and have a kick-ass life that we want to live.
Wow. I love that. And at the time, that was obviously hard for you, because it sounds like, first of all, you lost the thing that you did together, but you also lost some level of time while you supported him in his work. Did you need, I guess, coaching or therapy, or how did you get through the inherent threat that would have created to your nervous system when you realized, okay, this relationship is going into a new container where I am going to be a little bit more, there's going to be less time together? How did you get through that without it making you just insecure and sabotage the relationship?
Yeah. Luckily, I have a lot of my own tools because I've been coaching women for a long time. And so I was able to have the self-awareness for myself of going, whoa, I don't feel good in my body. What's going on here? And I was able to really work through it. I journaled a lot. I voice noted to myself a lot. Like I said, I was living in Bali, so I didn't have any of my friends around. The time zones were different. I couldn't just pick up a phone and call somebody. I kind of had to do it all on my own. And I took a lot of walks on the beach. And just had to
I'm just imagining that the mocktail sales in Bali went up that month. Like, who is this girl that's spending like $80 a day on mocktails?
crying alone with my cocktail.
Yeah. I'm not drinking alcohol anymore. Where's Spencer? Oh,
But I will
this fake daiquiri makes me feel slightly better.
But I will tell you, now that I'm pregnant and I'm, not drinking again, I love the fact that we've gotten past that and that we've evolved past the fact that we have to drink to be able to connect, because I don't even think about it anymore. And he doesn't think about it. And he's doing it with me. We're both not drinking for the entire pregnancy and beyond. And it's not an issue and it's not a thing. And if anything, it's brought us even more close together in new ways. So,
and how does a woman in that situation, where's the line between giving the guy the space to do what he needs to do, setting up a new relationship bubble, as you put it, versus walking back? Because there's so much out there, and we talk to our clients a lot about this. Make sure your needs are being met. Be aware of your needs. Don't be afraid to speak to your needs. There's so much of that out there. How do you balance that too? How do you judge that line of, okay, well, I'm going to lean back? And Sam and I have gone through this as well, where I go through busy work periods and we sort of have to negotiate to make sure her needs are met during the period as well. How do you know if you're in this situation and a woman's listening, oh, this is okay to walk back, like my needs are still being met, or actually I'm going into accepting Crumbs territory?
It all depends on, I think, where you're at in your relationship. Obviously, this was a point where we've been together for, I think, 4 years at this point. So it wasn't the early days. We'd spent a lot of quality time together, and it was just an evolution of the relationship for that time. And I had to really make sure that it wasn't coming from a needy place within me. And that's a big thing to ask yourself. Is this coming from a needy place? Like a place where I'm feeling a void that needs to be filled for me because I'm not feeling happy in my own self? Or is this me genuinely missing somebody that, we had this connection with? So for me, I felt confident in what I was doing, but I needed to keep filling up my own cup. And then I was able to express, well, if we're not going to do this, I would love to have other ways that we connect. So we would take walks in the morning and we'd go and do activities in the evenings and things like that. So it was just more of an adjustment of the needs, not being one specific thing. But I think in the early days, this is why circular dating is so important, is that you're not putting all of your needs on one person too soon. You're giving them lots of time to prove to you that they can naturally fulfill your needs without it being an issue. And if you have a guy that's really focused in his career and he's like, sorry, babe, I can't really give you that much, it's not a big deal because you've got lots of other guys that are also showing you that they want to give things to you. And you get to decide, is that enough with this person or not, without making them wrong.
And final question on this for you, because I'm fascinated now. If Spencer came out one day and went towards something that was calling to him that you found just against your values, let's say, if we take the pro-life example, well, maybe that's not a good example in this context. Maybe if we take religion as an example, your one particular religion, you always want to raise your kids in that religion, and he was completely the opposite. Or even geographic location. He says, I'm just called to live in Antarctica. It's my calling. And you just hate the cold. Is there, can everything be worked through with the right work? Or is there a point where unfortunately values just change and people need to be not just growing apart, but literally apart? What do you think?
Luckily, I have not had to face anything that threatening yet. But I know that that can definitely happen. And I think if values are that serious, I mean, I think I would be curious to hear your thoughts. I don't have a specific answer for that, but I do think that if someone has a value that is that important in their heart, and it's more important than the relationship, then we have to honor them in that, even if it means the relationship has to end. Because the last thing you want to do is keep someone trapped in something where they become resentful of you. But the question is that value, is that religion more important than this entire relationship that we've built together? And if it is, then okay, I send you on your way and I wish the best for you. But if it's a value like, I have to be a hockey player, well, I know you want to be a hockey player, but is it more important than all the 10 years of our relationship and that career and lifestyle is not going to work for me? No, it's not. Okay, then we need to do some give and take. But I think it can really get into tricky territory with the values, because if we start coming in saying, no, you can't have that value, or I don't like that, or I need you to do something different to make me happy, the resentment can erode the relationship so easily. And that can get really, really tricky.
And it's just relating it back to your drinking example. If you had really stuck to your value around drinking, really you guys probably wouldn't be together right now.
If I was a mad alcoholic and I said, drinking is so important to me and we have to be able to relate through drinking, we probably would not be together. Because that was an important enough value where he said, no, my career, my purpose needs me to be at my highest performing level, and alcohol is not going to help me get there. This is not going to work. And it wouldn't work. Yeah.
Well said, Teal. That was really insightful. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you. A little fun, a little info, a little education, all in one. That's what you get on the Tinder project.
That's what you get here with us, guys. Teal, it has been a pleasure today.
Always.
Thanks for joining us.
Always.
Guys, thanks for listening today. It's been a pleasure having you. We will see you next week.